Well, it's 12 o'clock and it looks like everyone that was in the waiting room has joined us. Welcome, everyone. I'm Jane Montanaro, Executive Director of Preservation Connecticut, and welcome to our fall session of Talking About Preservation, our virtual preservation noontime chats. So happy that you've all joined us today to talk about protecting the parkway. Preservation Connecticut is the statewide historic preservation nonprofit organization. We were established in 1975 by a special act of the Connecticut General Assembly as the statewide nonprofit and as a statutory partner with the State Historic Preservation Office. Our organization offers grants. We do easements for historic preservation. We offer educational programming, and we offer our Circuit Rider program, which is a field service program where we provide boots on the ground technical assistance for all people and organizations and municipalities and developers who have an interest and are stewards of historic buildings in Connecticut. So we are your go-to organization for any questions that you have on preservation in Connecticut. And we have a large network of wonderful preservation partners, one of which is the Merritt Parkway Conservancy. And we're so pleased to have Wes Haynes here with us today to update us on all of the activities that the Parkway is doing. And Wes is a longtime friend, partner, supporter, and colleague of Preservation Connecticut. He served as a co-director of Preservation Connecticut, as a circuit rider, and as the director of the Making Places program. So Wes, we are so thrilled to have you. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, and we can't wait to chat about our favorite parkway, the Merritt Parkway.
Thank you, Jane, and it's really great to be back and to see a lot of familiar faces here online. I feel like I've never really left home in Hamden somehow. So
we don't let you go far.
Yeah. So
stop sharing, and now you can share.
Okay. Okay, so today we're here to talk about protecting the parkway. The Conservancy is basically like a friends group for the Merritt Parkway. We consider ourselves a partner with Connecticut Department of Transportation, ConnDOT, and we also consider ourselves a steward of the parkway. I'll sort of tell you more about the Conservancy's work as I go through flip through the slides here, and I'll try to leave enough time for questions and some discussion afterwards. So I'm going to move pretty quickly through the slides. I hope I don't go too fast. So let's see. I think I need to ask my wife. Oh no, okay. She's on a Zoom call right now. And unfortunately, we've had issues when both of us are online. One of us can't move the slides. But we wouldn't be here talking about protecting the parkway today if it wasn't for Preservation Connecticut and their earlier name, the Connecticut Trust for Historic Preservation. They led the charge on saving the Merritt Parkway back in the 1980s, leading to the National Register listing of the Parkway as a historic district, written by Tappy Lynn and Chris Wiegren, who's still at Preservation Connecticut. The Parkway, the trust, now Preservation Connecticut, was really the leading organization that ensured that the Merritt Parkway would be protected as an historic resource going forward. The National Register nomination has real consequences here because all money that's put into the Parkway is public money, and it needs to be reviewed under the Federal Historic Preservation Act. And I think Chris's National Register nomination really does, the statement of significance does sort of say it all in the first line. And that is what we're trying to save the Parkway from and what we're trying to move the Parkway towards or keep it that way is as a vestige of the City Beautiful movement. which was, an amazing movement within architecture in the first half of the 20th century and the very late 19th century in Connecticut. It left an enormous mark on our landscape. And the Parkway is one of the major works of the City Beautiful movement. It's not a city, but it does connect cities. And it is, which was the initial Olmstedian idea of Parkway, was a beautiful road to connect Brooklyn and New York and Manhattan, the two urban areas, by a kind of a tree-lined, heavily landscaped feature. And the Parkway is significant for a number of other reasons in transportation history. But really what we're trying to protect with the Parkway today is its City Beautiful characteristic. The origin did occur. The introduction of the automobile into the Connecticut landscape was a very disruptive force. By the 1920s, the post road was pretty much the only way to move traffic through Fairfield County between New York and New Haven. And after World War I, with the sort of development of trucks, the industrial interests wanted a dedicated truck route by the mid-20s because they couldn't manage to move their product to the supply chain in Connecticut through the post road and all this traffic. And the early efforts of the highway department, which became DOT eventually, was anything but beautiful. It was really a scarring influence on the landscape. These bypasses around urban areas in Fairfield County. I believe this is either Norwalk or Westport. And so it led to a proposal to put in a completely dedicated truck route that would pretty much be a separate road, separate from the post road altogether. There were several areas that they proposed to put it parallel to post road, and then another proposal to move it about 6 miles north of the post road at the edge of where the basic Fairfield County was built up to, where it turned into the backcountry. And the two leading proponents of this were Schuyler Merritt on the right, who the Parkway is named after. He was of the generation that he would have been in his 20s at the World Columbian Exposition. And we don't know if he attended it, but certainly he would have known about it. He was trained as a lawyer at Yale. He was a banker. He was the attorney for Stanford's major industrial company, Yale and Town. And he was also a local philanthropist who built at least one major City Beautiful building in Stanford, the Ferguson Library. He was the chairman of the building committee on that. He also later became congressman, and he was the one that really pushed for the truck route, the alternate truck route, and then backed off that when there was such a backlash from truck route skeptics such as Helen Binney Kitchell, who was a naturalist from Greenwich. She was very involved with the development of Connecticut Forest and Parks Association, and she really had a lot of questions about the impact of that. The two of these people were very influential in working it out to create a parkway 6 miles north, dedicated for cars and getting the cars off the road rather than the trucks, and leaving the post road to the trucks. So it could have been named the Kitchell Parkway. She was the assembly representative that got the appropriations through, kept her eye on the prize. She was also a fierce anti-billboard advocate, which is why the Parkway has a lot of restrictions on commercial things, and the billboard interests voted her out of office, paid for her opponent. So when it opened, the Parkway did have that City Beautiful vision that was on the T-shirt that we opened this presentation with. And over time, as traffic increased and speeds increased, new safety precautions were introduced. This post and cable guide rail was added. And by the 1960s, after Interstate 95, there was a new aesthetic in the Department of Transportation. A metal guardrail was put in. the parkway started to be chipped away at. The city beautiful qualities were chipped away at by small details like that. So that with the increase in volume, there were proposals in the 1970s to widen the parkway, to double its size. There's enough area to put a second Merritt Parkway on the south shoulder. It was intentionally laid out that way. But by the 1970s, with all the regulations over interstate highways, you could never put an interchange in for this road without doing massive eminent domain up near the parkway interchanges. But what the trust, that then trust, Preservation Connecticut's forebear, was really trying to save the parkway from was it just becoming obliterated by overscaled designs. And this was a proposed interchange in the 1970s that the then trust and local preservationists, including Catherine Schuyler Merritt's daughter, fought to prevent being built. It was one of those mix masters that is in Waterbury now being deconstructed. They succeeded to a certain degree to get the interchange scaled back to a more manageable size, but it still is a kind of a moment on the parkway that's not very parkway-like at that point. The discussion about widening and modernizing it continued into the 90s until Lowell Weicker was elected governor and appointed Emil Frankel as the head of the Department of Transportation. And they worked out a deal with the preservationists not to widen the parkway, but that as long as the preservationists recognized its critical economic function, that they would work to protect the special aesthetic and historic character. And I think it was on the second or third try of trying to get it listed on the National Register. It was Emil Frankel was the one that permitted it to be put on the register, which would basically put it under a whole different set of regulations. So the Connecticut Trust work led to the National Register listing. And from that came the Merritt Parkway Working Group that developed guidelines, guidelines for the corridor improvements, guidelines for the landscape, and guidelines for bridge restoration. And eventually, when those guidelines were in place, proposed the Merritt Parkway Conservancy, a privately funded outside group be established to become a partner with DOT on the Merritt Parkway Advisory Committee, and also to basically ensure that the guidelines were being followed, in the private sector partner to see that the guidelines were being followed. And when the Conservancy was formed, there had been, major changes to the use of the parkway. 1938 was designed for 45 miles an hour. In 2003, the average speed was 73. Today, I think it's up closer to 77 of 85% of the drivers. It handled 18,000 vehicles today, 57,000 by 2003, and I think the last count I saw was around 72,000 in certain points of the parkway per day. So there's no problem with this historic site having an absence of visitorship. There's 25 million vehicles per year. This is the second most heavily visited site in the New York metropolitan area next to Grand Central Station that's listed on the National Register. So those guidelines went into effect into an 8-phase corridor rehabilitation. The parkway was divided up into 8 stretches. And over on the left, you can see the new guide rail that went in to replace the metal guide rail. And the other major feature was to enlarge the parkway to widen the travel lanes by 8 feet on each side. So there's 4 feet of additional paving that was added and 4 feet of stabilized earth that was cut away so that there'd be a breakdown lane introduced. There was never a breakdown lane introduced on the parkway. And it's very difficult to pull cars over for enforcement on the parkway as well. Each of these phases includes an initial phase of going in and taking down a lot of vegetation. We get a lot of phone calls when this moment happens. In the case of the construction that's underway right now in phase 8 of this 8-phase project, It's over by the Route 7 interchange. All these are invasives that are being taken down, and really faulty trees. There were about 4 or 5 oaks here, and all of them had very, very weak root systems or diseased at the bases because of the invasives that had gotten to them. This area will be replanted, and we are working very closely with DOT now because we have not liked the first cut of the replanting plan here. This is also a site of a major drainage connection that needs to be detailed appropriately. And so under consideration right now is to put soil here to give us a little bit of elevation to screen the adjacent neighborhood from the parkway and the parkway from the adjacent neighborhood that's been revealed by this invasive clearing. This is one of the major things that goes on in the each phase of the rehabilitation. The construction generates a lot of earth removal, and the DOT needs to put it somewhere. And part of our job is to make sure that they only put it in places where we have opportunities for screening things that have grown up since the parkway, such as this neighborhood adjacent to it, but to keep it from becoming a regulated space. If you ever drive on any interstate highway, you'll notice that the shoulders on both sides are usually very, very symmetrical. You're kind of driving through a kind of a tunnel, and that's from all the soil that's been displaced. So part of our job is to make sure this soil gets removed off the parkway, but only reused to be used to the benefit of the parkway. We've been involved with a number of bridge rehabilitations in the last couple of years. Most of the bridges are done within the corridor rehabilitation phases, but the Lake Avenue Bridge in Greenwich was a standalone. This bridge was very, very structurally unsound, and this is what it looked like as originally built, and this is what it looked like in 2 years ago when the rehabilitation that had been planned for 10 years finally got funded and the work began. It was painted blue that had rusted through extensively, and the structural steel was shot on this bridge. So the bridge had to be completely taken out of service during the summer of 2019. And because this is a major school route in Greenwich, bus route, we had to really get it back in place. And the Conservancy, the contractor, was a little bit worried that the Conservancy was very hands-on in this project, but we were able to allow the contractor to finish about a week and a half ahead of schedule when it was done. The Conservancy in 2009, when we first knew that this bridge was going to be structurally replaced, we hired an architectural conservator from New York City to do paint analysis and determine the original paint scheme, which was pretty close to what looked in this hand-tinted postcard, which was the only color image we had of the original bridge. And all the ornamental ironwork, we weren't sure. Cast iron is very brittle. We didn't know if we'd be able to get it off without a lot of breakage. We got it off with no breakage, which was really wonderful. Very good contractor on this project. It was taken to New London, sandblasted or sponge blasted with a very soft medium that absorbed all the lead and the toxic elements of the finishes, refinished with multiple layers of tunemic epoxy modified coatings, and refinished according very close to the way that we had determined with the paint analysis. And this is how the finished bridge came out in 2019. And we were very pleased about this. Preservation Connecticut gave this project a joint award to the contractor and to DOT and the Conservancy for the rehabilitation of this bridge. And this was the ribbon cutting, again, about a week and a half ahead of schedule, with all parties involved, with a very happy day. Recently, we've just completed the rehabilitation of the Clinton Avenue Bridge, which is a really unusual bridge in that it had it was polychromatic, permanent polychromatic on the parkway, which few of the other bridges were. Up in the upper right is what it looked like originally. It had lost all the polychromy on it by the time we started construction. And this is how it came out now. And this required a lot of samples going back and forth. And these little diaper panels that are up at the top of the parapet on the wing walls have reflective glass in it. So it kind of shimmers at night when the headlights pick it up. We also matched the original mortar finish up on the parapet as well around the glass panels to imitate Stony Creek granite, and then painted everything underneath with a mineral coating paint that was matched to the Stony Creek color. The rehabilitation of the Newtown Turnpike Bridge, we mostly did triage on this. This was an unfortunate project. A chunk of this bridge fell off. You can see up in the upper left-hand corner that it was a scored cast stone finish on the outside against the structural concrete behind it, hand scored. And DOT, when the chunk fell off, they went in the upper right-hand corner and just boarded the entire bridge up over the travel lanes, which really wasn't the proper protocol for a preservation project. It should have been a reversible stabilization like netting or something. But that's where we were, and we ended up with an unusable, damaged concrete finish. So DOT prefers to use form liner. It wasn't our choice, but we said we would accept it if they would not put it in like form liner is used on all the DOT projects with a lot of vertical cuts through it for the expansion joints. So it's really the first project that uses a staggered panel joint for the form liners. It had to be custom designed. I think I reviewed drawings for this 4 or 5 times before we accepted the final pattern, and it matches the original pattern pretty closely. So we're more or less happy that maybe we advanced the use of form liner a few stages, but this is really unfortunate this happened. And the bridge the major bridge on the road that got rehabilitated that no one sees unless you're down on the Saugatuck River, because you can't, all you see of it from the parkway is the railing here, is one of the most magnificent bridges on the parkway, and quite a monumental bridge. And all the steel work underneath has been under restoration and stabilization. They're adding different new flanges to it as well for the past 5 years. It's just winding up now. So that's just some of the bridge work that we've been involved with. We've also been involved with upgrading the service areas. The service areas are owned by DOT, but they're operated by concessionaires. And when the parkway was undergoing, they were added after the period of significance, but they were designed by the same architect who did the bridges, and their colonial revival, which is a sort of a city beautiful expression. We talked them into keeping them, and if we could come up with a way of figuring out how to rehab them for the services, they would accept it. So they were not demolished, they were all rehabbed, and a new canopy was designed by one of our board members, Herb Newman, an architect from New Haven. And this project also won several awards for design. One bit of unfinished business is the Route 7 interchange, which we were created in 2002, and DOT, without consulting us or the public, just began to put in place this interchange that had been designed back in the Route 8 days without any consultation. So together with Preservation Connecticut and the National Trust for Historic Preservation, we got an injunction to stop work. And the judge ruled in our favor and basically said, okay, DOT and Conservancy, even though we were supposed to be partners, we were now litigants with them, told us to go away and work out a solution. So after 26 different alternatives, we think we're very close to an acceptable alternative, which actually deconstructs some of the original interchange from the the introduction of Super 7, which is really what tied this in. This interchange has to tie into two major motorways, highways, within like a very short quarter of a mile. This is half the size of any other interchange proposed. And it's accomplished by putting traffic lights at the intersection, the base of the ramps with Super 7, which is over on the left-hand side of the screen. We think that this would be acceptable. It doesn't have any construction that flies over the parkway. It would be less visible than the current interchange is right now. And we think that this would be an improvement. The one loss that we will have from this is the loss of the Main Avenue Bridge, which is an overpass bridge. It means that the parkway passes over it. But we will insist that a good bridge be put back in its place. That bridge would need to be taken out to be widened. Over the course of time, we have come to oppose the concept of a multi-use trail introduced onto the parkway. The DOT received a grant from the National Scenic Byway Foundation to do a feasibility study on the multi-use trail, and their conditions for putting one on were just not acceptable to us. It would require a continuous chain link fencing along to separate the trail from the roadway, just to prevent children or a stray dog from running out into the traffic lane and creating a kind of a backup and probably a massive crash. It would require an 8-foot wide cut through the trees. It would require extensive switchbacks. So it wouldn't be shown as depicted in this rendering here as a kind of a straight parallel lane. It would be going in and out and in and out all the way to the edge of the parkway and then all the way to the outer edge of the right of way. And it would require a lot of blasting and ramping and bridging across wetlands. And this is pretty much up in the upper left is what it would look like. This was a concept in the 1990s that the East Coast Greenway Alliance, which were a bunch of bicyclists that got together and said, wouldn't it be great to have along the eastern seaboard to have a continuous trail that links all the urban areas? And that's a great idea. And they looked at a map and they saw these green parkways outside the New York City area and it said, well, maybe the Merritt Parkway would be a suitable area. But unlike the Westchester system, which if you look at the names of all the Westchester's parkways, they're the Hutchinson River, the Bronx River, the Sprain Brook, they're all down in the valleys. The parkway goes over ridges. It's a continuous slog up and down ridges. And that's what really drove DOT to say, well, we're going to need to switch back these to make it at least an attempt to make it ADA compatible. This is a section at the top here, it's an engineering section, so it's more exaggerated, more steeply drawn than it would be, but it still would have to, even this relatively modest section on the parkway in Greenwich would still have to ascend 80 feet and descend another 60 feet just to get across that one ridge. And this is what the switchback formation would look like. So we have come around to saying that this would not be the right thing to do for the parkway. One of the existential issues that we face on the parkway today is vegetation management, which takes a lot of different forms. And the Historic American Engineering Record in 1992 documented the parkway, and they tried to document what hypothetically the parkway looked like in 1938. This is the James Farm Bridge in Stratford, and what it looked like in 1992. 1938, the vegetation is rather small. By 1992, it's grown up quite a lot. And today it's grown up even more. So each of the phases of the corridor rehabilitation basically assesses the trees on the parkway, takes down the ones that are diseased, or in some cases, we are taking out most of the white pines and most of the ash because they're not going to be with us very long. But there's a really robust replanting plan along the shoulder. And so if you look at Greenwich, which was the first phase of the Parkway rehabilitation, the trees that were planted there have gotten a certain amount of height, and that was 15 years ago. And so we're dealing with an ever-changing landscape with the Parkway. And one of the problems with some of the older trees that have been poorly maintained and have gotten choked by invasives is resiliency. After storms, we get a lot of storm damage that closes the Parkway and needs to be triaged and just gotten out of there. So right now we're working on a new plan. We do not have one of the guidelines that was not looked at during the 1990s was a guideline for vegetation management. There was a landscape plan that called for the replanting of the Parkway in the 1990s during the corridor rehabilitation, but not to maintain it in the long run. And so we're going to try to get some new concepts of resiliency into that plan. The median trees are an issue that is evaluated in each phase of construction. We disagree with DOT over the extent of removals in Westport, but we came up with a compromise that left a large majority of the large-scale trees that were well-formed, that didn't have codominance and a number of other characteristics. They were protected. And DOT, to its credit, is replanting every tree that is taken out on the median with a new tree and a larger caliber tree than would normally go in. So they are trying to do that. One of the problems with the median is that all the drain lines drain down through the center of the median. So they have to either intersect or go around the roots of the trees. And the snowplows, when these trees are off center, tend to hit the edges of the root and damage the root system. So we understand the need, and we are taking out only the defective trees, and we're really working to keep all the healthy trees in place as we go forward. On the shoulders, we have a different kind of environment. DOT has been introducing a clear zone that basically allows vehicles to sort of recover before hitting a tree, and taking out some of the trees that are leaning, like the one up at the upper right, leaning towards the roadway, or just simply maintaining them. And they do this with a piece of equipment called a buncher feller, or a feller buncher. And they had been using one with a very short reach that meant that they had to drive on the shoulder with these heavy steel tractors and compact all the soil, which only invited invasives and really damaged the quality of the shoulders. So arguing again with under the Secretary of the Interior standards to use the gentlest means possible, we got them to get and retain a larger piece of equipment that could work from the shoulder itself and the stabilized part of the shoulder, so it wasn't compacting any of the vegetated zone. I'm the guy that keeps bringing up at meetings that we need to control invasives better. And I would really like to see what New York State and New Jersey are doing. At Riverside State Park, for example, in New York, is they're hiring goats. They're contracting with goat farmers to put them on the shoulders of Riverside Drive in New York, and they'll eat all sorts of invasives, poison ivy, woodbine, all the invasives, really kind of just, they'll eat anything. I would really like to see goats on the side of the Parkway, because we don't have the manpower. We can't afford the cost of putting people on. We write grants to do very small sections of the invasive control, but the really long-term solution, I think, is to control this with goats. You can imagine the reaction of DOT for the most part when they see me proposing this. There's a universal eye roll in the room. Mowing is a constant maintenance problem on the Parkway. And although the narrative, the storyline may be different on the image of the left, the mowing basically stops traffic, because DOT puts a crash truck in the lane adjacent to what's being mowed, if the median's being mowed or the shoulder is being mowed, and reduces the traffic down to one lane. Again, New York and New Jersey and most other DOTs have gone over to robotic mowing, which is this is a robotic mower on the right that's operated by a remote person who could be standing on one of the bridges or on the shoulder, and we wouldn't need the crash trucks, and we could maintain the shoulders. The other thing is that mowing really does determine a lot of the geometry of the shoulders. DOT doesn't like to design a grade steeper than 3:1, but these robotic mowers will handle a grade of 2:1, which would allow for more variation on the shoulders going forward. Other issues, these are not DOT issues, but these are other issues. We are constantly getting trucks on the parkway. State police tell us that they're being directed there by GPS, which just the free software will put a truck on the parkway. They're hitting the bridges now at a rate of 1.75 per month. And every time they hit a bridge, the engineers have to come out and look at the bridge to make sure they haven't done any structural damage. It backs up traffic for hours because they have to back the truck off the bridge. And it's just a real nuisance. So Senator Blumenthal is leading the charge to try to get the Google and other free providers of GPS software to mark the Merritt and other parkways with height restrictions to get trucks off the highway. Responsible GPS systems that you subscribe to if you're a trucker will never direct you onto the parkway, but it's the free stuff that does. And then commercial vehicle use. One of our board members, he's a captain in the Stanford Police Force, Captain Tom Lombardo, just spent an hour this summer doing a count of illegal vehicles on the parkway. These include over height vehicles, they included over length vehicles, and he came up with an astonishing number just from one fixed position of 213 illegal vehicles per hour on the parkway. So these are things that the Conservancy, we can't really control, but this is something we want to take up with the legislature. We have signage. There's lights on one of the bridges now that is constantly hit. And we'd like to do something more creative with the lighting on the bridges to prevent the bridge strikes by trucks. Another issue that we deal with at the Conservancy is viewshed protection. Here we've had very good luck working with our partner at SHPO because when cell wireless towers come up, they require federal licensing. So they go through a 106 review, and we can weigh in and prevent them. So this is a simulation of one that was proposed very close to the highway shoulder in Norwalk. And with the help of the State Historic Preservation Office, we got the tower knocked back to a flagpole, which is a lot less intrusive into the view shed. One of our issues that we have right now is two proposals in Fairfield. The one on the top, which was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission with conditions of knocking 2 stories off of it at our request, and the one below, which was approved without any conditions, and it's 6 times the size of the Hotel Hi-Ho across the road from it at Black Rock Turnpike. These are this kind of supersized adjacent development on lots that were zoned for single family is only made possible under the statute known as Section 8-30G, and we can talk about that in the discussion group. The Conservancy is getting hammered in the press by opposing affordable housing. We're not opposing affordable housing. We're opposing really bad supersized development adjacent to the parkway. And the fact of the matter is that the Park Avenue project can fit just the same number of affordable units in it by taking 2 stories off of it as it would without. And one of the roles we play is engagement, which is getting people excited about the parkway and getting them informed about the parkway. This is a photograph of a bridge lighting project that we did in 2003, I believe it was, when we were first created, that got national attention. Architectural lighting of the bridge. It was really well received in Fairfield County. And we're currently working with a wonderful lighting designer who has volunteered her time to basically come up with a plan to light a bridge to celebrate the end of COVID, whenever that is, with another bridge lighting project, which we hope will be either late this year or early next year at this point. Because you can really see at night when you can't see anything else, the bridges really pop when they're lit correctly. So we're, as you can imagine, this is something that going through DOT is a long bureaucratic slog, but we do have some people in the design and bridge department at DOT that really thinks this is a pretty cool idea to do again. You may not be aware that we maintain a small museum, even though we don't have a walk-in office. We have a small museum in the Riders Landing shopping or mall in Stratford, right off the Main Avenue exit. If you've never seen the Main Avenue Bridge, this is even just getting off is a treat. That's it down the lower left-hand corner. It's one of the craziest designs on the Parkway. It looks like something out at the end of a Bugs Bunny cartoon. But we do have up at the museum an exhibit that was mounted by the Greenwich Historical Society several years ago, and when they took it down, we put it up in our little museum. So it's sort of a permanent display at Riders Landing, and it's open weekdays for anybody to walk in and visit. We also put together years ago a guide to the Merritt Parkway that features many of the highlights in terms of bridges and landscape features, and talks a little bit about the history on the guide. And we have a series of talks that we started to give in person before the COVID shutdown, but are now doing online, mostly through other institutions like Preservation Connecticut or local libraries. One is a general talk on the Merritt Parkway's past and more of a history than we're talking about today, and more of a talk about what our vision for the future is. We have one that's just dedicated to the historic bridges of the Parkway. We have one that two talks that we developed that deal with some of the context that the very sensitive siting of the Parkway preserved by not taking it out, as opposed to the way that I-95 was introduced in the landscape indiscriminately, just taking out hundreds, if not thousands, of historic buildings. And that are also related to the whole city beautiful theme of Fairfield County. And we offer these free of charge to any civic organization, any public library to do. And if you know of some organization, please drop me a line and let me know you'd like to see it. And this is a kind of an engagement idea that's on my wish list. We have a number of artists in Fairfield County that are that use the Merritt. They recognize this work of art, the Merritt Parkway, as a subject of art. Two painters in particular, Cindy Mullins in Ridgefield and Patricia Corbett in Wallingford, have done very interesting series on the Merritt Parkway. And then there's a group of called the Southern Connecticut Modern Quilt Guild based in Southport that used as their theme the modern Merritt. This quilt is enormous. It doesn't fit in our museum. We don't have the ceiling height for it. It's really a remarkable thing. So if you know of any place that we could, perhaps I would love to bring in a guest curator to look at the artwork of the Merritt Parkway over time and mount an exhibit at some point, I'd love to hear from you. So I think I tried to get it in under 45 minutes, so we'd leave some time for questions and comments and discussion.
Thank you, Wes. That's fantastic. What an amazing resource the Parkway is, and I'm just blown away by how much the Conservancy does to protect the resource. My question is, where does the Conservancy get its funding to do all this amazing work that you do?
Well, we're completely privately funded. We don't get any public money. That was a structural, I wouldn't call it a flaw, but it's a structural problem with the Conservancy. We have to put a certain effort every year into a year-end appeal. There are a lot of people in Fairfield County that support our work. We have just received a relatively large endowment for a gift from one of a member of the Merritt family, an estate, but we're completely privately supported. So certainly, if you like what we're doing, I will certainly invite you to contribute to the Conservancy.
And we can do that through the website?
You can do it through the website, or I can send you out some information on how to do it if you want to write a check.
Terrific. Thanks, Wes. So I'll open it up to others who have questions. You can unmute yourself or raise your hand. I can't see everybody at once.
Jane, this is Deborah from Historic Preservation. Can you hear me?
Hi, Deborah. Yes, we can hear you.
Hi. Hello to everybody that's on.
Hi.
I just wanted to say this was absolutely awesome. I mean, everybody involved, bravo to all of you. The Merritt Parkway has been ingrained in my childhood and my adult history as well. My dad was the president of the Ebony Horsemen here in Hartford. And anytime, back in the 70s, and anytime they packed the horses up, going to some parade or rodeo, we took the Merritt Parkway. And I would be in the back just so mesmerized of the trees and the scenery. And it like I said, it's been ingrained in my childhood. And now as an adult, for the over past 10 years, I've been affiliated with quite a few groups in New York. And when I saw the goats, oh my goodness, I had to control myself, because when we saw the goats in New York, my girlfriends were all laughing. Like I said, that is the best way. I said, that's an animal lawnmower. I said, they know exactly what they're doing. I said, they need to do that here in Connecticut. And then you put it in here. I just kind of chuckled to myself. And also, I would always tell my girlfriends, if we're going to New York, take the Merritt Parkway. You can enjoy the scenery. No accidents. I said, it's basically a straight shot. I always got voted down. They would go 91, 95. We get stuck in this construction and also accidents. Now everyone got their head down. No one wants to look at me. See, I told you, go to Merritt Parkway. So this was absolutely awesome. Awesome. Thank you.
Deborah, thanks so much.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you for those really warm thoughts. I appreciate it.
Colleen, you have a question. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Colleen.
Hi, Wes. I really enjoyed this. I can't say I take the Merritt Parkway a great deal, but since the pandemic, I have driven it on my way to Massachusetts several times. So I loved learning about the history of this. And I'm kind of an infrastructure junkie. So this was like everything I needed today. And because it's virtual, I will say that I was able to participate from Brooklyn. So thank you for having that. Awesome. I have a question about any special maintenance considerations that the Merritt has that aren't available on other ConnDOT roads, and how you address that with ConnDOT.
That's a great question. And we're trying to address that at a more vigorous level. Right now, the maintenance guidelines call for special considerations will be given to the Merritt Parkway. So it's in its own class. Every time there's a phrase about vegetation in their current guidelines. But it's a negotiation. Every time they want to introduce a clear zone, we talk to them about that. And they do back off. They don't go the full 30 feet back. Sometimes they go 20 feet back. And it's a kind of a judgment call. So I walked the Parkway shoulders with the maintenance staff on occasion. We talk about which trees need to be come down. But you know, my ideal would be to get us to a point where we're more like the Central Park Conservancy and have a dedicated, specially trained maintenance staff to deal. We still get tagged with graffiti a lot on the bridges and on the rocks, and we don't really have a good response for that. The maintenance guidelines really require too many safety precautions to be able to respond in a kind of a timely manner to get to the graffiti and get it out of the substrate before it really sets in. So we're working on that, and the management guidelines vegetation management guidelines that we're working on right now, I'm hoping will go a long way to at least identifying the problems and seeing where we might need to change the scale of equipment and maybe some of the procedures that they're doing on the parkway. But you're absolutely right. The parkway is in completely different maintenance space than the rest of DOT, but DOT highways, but they are using a lot of the same equipment. So everything is scaled to what DOT uses on I-91.
And also, just to follow up, I have a sense that Connecticut has really nice roads compared with, say, Massachusetts or New York State. So is it more a maintenance focused DOT than other states? You guys got good roads. I don't know why.
We do. We have good second. I think Connecticut is more protective of its secondary roads, but I would say New York State and the way the Taconic is really well maintained. The Taconic is also on the National Register, whereas like the Hutch is not. The Hutch isn't on the register, and it's really a kind of a mishmash these days. I think that the DOTs are they're all playing under the same federal standards when they take federal money. So I think the secondary roads that get less federal money are better maintained in Connecticut than some of the secondary roads in New York. I see Don Mays has his hand up.
Yeah.
Thanks, Wes.
Sure. Wes, thank you for a wonderful presentation. It was really interesting, and I appreciate the time you've taken to share this information with us. Fabulous job. I do have a question regarding the East Coast Greenway Alliance and their proposed plan for this multi-use trail. It was interesting that you showed us the challenges in actually developing this trail. However, I've been hearing, talking to a lot of people who say, look, parkway it's a parkway. It's a great place for recreation and also a great opportunity to reduce dependence on vehicle traffic to commute from one place to another. The trailway in New York State, the Empire State Trailway, is fabulous. It goes from all the way from Buffalo to Albany and then all the way down to New York. It is in many places, it is just an absolutely beautiful piece of what I consider to be parkland. As a cyclist, I've ridden many sections of that, starting from the Erie Canal Trailway down to the Westchester Trailway. I was a little bit stunned, though, in what you presented in saying that the cost to develop a multi-use trailway along the Merritt is something like $6.6 million per mile, which seems just astonishing. And I looked at what the cost of the Empire State Trailway was, and the most expensive section of that was not only, but $1.25 million per mile. And I'm wondering how you came up with the figure of the 6.6 million.
Well, that is basically taking the total cost of the trail estimated by CTDOT in their feasibility study and dividing it by 39.5 miles. And so that's where we got the 6.6 million number from.
I see.
So, it's really a question of topography. Certainly the Farmington trail, which is part of the Greenway, the Farmington Canal Trail didn't cost that much because it's on a flat grade. And so you don't have to do all these improvements for switching back to get to a level that you don't have to, you can't go up and down a hill. The parkway was designed in the automobile age. There had never been even a horse trail across the route of the Merritt Parkway. It was a brand new trail because the grades were too steep. And it wasn't really until the 1920s when gearing and brakes on cars could handle that kind of stuff that anybody even thought of traversing that terrain. So to put a walking trail that if would only be built with federal participation, and the federal money would come tied with ADA requirements that they wouldn't have to meet them, but they'd have to attempt to make the trail as close to ADA as possible. Just the blasting and the switchbacks, have driven up the cost, and also the structures for getting underneath the connecting roads where they are. And the other factor that really bothers us is just the visibility of this trail too. The chain link fence, DOT would require a continuous chain link fence to segregate, foot and bicycle trail from the roadway. And that would just be a major visual intrusion into the parkway. So I think that, it would be great if a trail went through Fairfield County that could connect workplaces. And there certainly are workplaces in certain positions off of the Merritt at Route 7, at High Ridge Road in Stamford, and a couple of other places. But the logical place to put a bike trail in Fairfield County is along the railroad tracks, where it's absolutely flat. And it connects all the different business centers in Fairfield County. So it makes a lot more sense to move a bike trail south where you don't have these hills to deal with. And you could probably put it in for a lot less money.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question. Hi, Wes. Thank you so much. I can't believe all that you have to do. I mean, your responsibilities are enormous, from the restoration of the bridges to the landscaping to all of the crashes and to all these aesthetic issues that come up. And I was in a session with you not too long ago, and you brought up your concern about the chain link fences above the bridges. And I'm curious to know, is that a bridge guideline, or how are you able to control and how many can have it and which should have it, and how you can vary them, and how is that working for you?
Well, thanks for that question, Susan. We are in preliminary discussion with DOT about modifying the fencing that is required on certain types of bridge projects. When a bridge is considered a major rehabilitation, such as Lake Avenue, it requires the fencing to go up, and that's required by a state statute. Even though it's not part of the interstate system, the Merritt Parkway is considered an interstate highway as a type of road. So where bridges cross interstate highways, they have to have preventions from people like throwing rocks over or themselves over. And so we're in conversation with DOT to come up with a more acceptable standardized design for that kind of protective fencing. And that's one thing that the Westchester Parkway system does better than we do. They have a simple paling fence with iron pails that go up and a very light cross rail that holds them together. It's a standard detail. It's almost invisible. Whereas on the Parkway, the engineers seem to want to design a different solution for every bridge, which only calls attention to itself. And also, I just find chain link is not a very city beautiful type finish. And so we're discussing that with them. we will have to design a fence that meets the federal requirement, which is a pretty tight opening in the spacing of the palings. So it's not required on a bridge that just gets cosmetic repair, but it's required on bridges that get major structural repair.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks, Wes. We're at 1 o'clock already. That hour just flew by. That was a wonderful
Okay.
presentation, and I concur with Susan. The amount of work that you do is just astounding, and thank you so much for being such a wonderful steward of the Parkway.
Thank you, Jane.
And thanks everyone for joining us today.
Yes, thank you for your great questions too.
This program is being recorded, so you can check it out on Preservation Connecticut's YouTube channel. We'll post that in a few days, and you can share that with anyone else who'd like to learn more about the Parkway. And we look forward to those other talks that you have, Wes. We can't get enough of the Merritt Parkway.
Great.
Thank you all so much.
So long.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Have a great day.